The aroma of garlic and ginger filled the kitchen as I chopped vegetables for prep, each knife stroke precise and measured. Just like Papa taught me. The familiar rhythm usually calmed my nerves, but today my hands shook slightly as I worked. I'm Diana Liu, owner of Golden Pearl, or what's left of it. The Chinese fusion restaurant my parents built from nothing, the place where I learned to walk between prep tables, where Papa taught me every secret of his Michelin-starred cuisine. Now half our tables sat empty most nights, thanks to the sleek new restaurant next door, Pearl and Jade, run by my ex-business partners, using my family's recipes. Deanna, my sous chef, Mike, stuck his head through the kitchen door. They're doing it again. I set down my knife and walked to the front window. Sure enough, Jason and Melissa stood outside their restaurant's entrance, greeting potential customers. Our potential customers, and directing them away from Golden Pearl. Health code violations, I heard Jason say clearly, his voice carrying through the evening air. Shame about the Liu place. Used to be good, but you know how these family restaurants let things slip. My jaw clenched. 6 months ago, Jason and Melissa had been my partners, helping modernize Golden Pearl after Papa's stroke forced him to retire. They'd handled the business side while I ran the kitchen, maintaining Papa's high standards while adding my own contemporary twists. Then they'd suggested splitting the business. It's nothing personal, Melissa had said, her smile never reaching her eyes. We just think the restaurant needs updating, a fresh approach, you understand. What I hadn't understood was that they'd already leased the space next door. Hadn't known they'd copied Papa's recipe book during late-night inventory checks. Hadn't realized they'd been slowly poisoning our reputation while planning their own venture. The betrayal still burned worse than overheated chili oil. Don't let them get to you, Mike said quietly. He'd stayed loyal when half our staff jumped ship to Pearl and Jade, drawn by promises of higher wages and profit sharing. We've got a full prep list for tonight. I nodded, heading back to my station, but the damage was already spreading through the neighborhood. Whispered rumors about food safety, subtle hints that Golden Pearl's best days were behind it, Instagram posts comparing the traditional, red, outdated decor of our place to Pearl and Jade's sleek modern aesthetic. Our revenue had dropped 40% in 3 months. Deanna, this time it was Amy, our hostess. Table 12 wants to speak to the owner. I wiped my hands and went out to the dining room. An elderly couple sat at the table, barely touched plates in front of them. Is something wrong with the food? I asked, though I already knew what was coming. It's not like we remember, the woman said apologetically. We've been coming here for 20 years, but lately, she gestured at her husband's Kung Pao chicken. The sauce isn't right, too bland. My heart sank. It was Papa's exact recipe, the one that had earned him his first Michelin star. But now that same recipe was being served next door, claimed as an original creation by our competitors. We heard the new place is good, the husband added kindly. Maybe it's time to. Thank you for your feedback, I cut him off politely. Your meal is on the house tonight. Back in the kitchen, I gripped the edge of my prep station, knuckles white. We'd lost 3 more regular customers, people who'd watched me grow up, who'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries at our tables. Day? Mike's voice was gentle. Maybe we should call your father? No, the word came out sharper than intended. Papa had suffered his stroke right after Jason and Melissa joined the business. The doctors said stress was a factor. I wouldn't burden him with this. Besides, what could he do? At 68, barely recovered, his hands still trembled too much to hold a walk. His speech came slowly now, though his mind remained sharp enough to feel the shame of watching his life's work crumble. The dinner service dragged on, each empty table a reminder of our declining fortune. Through the windows, I could see Pearl and Jade packed with diners, their sleek interior glowing with carefully curated ambience. After closing, I sat in Papa's old office, reviewing our books. At this rate, we had maybe 3 months before we'd have to close. All our savings had gone into renovations last year, renovations Jason and Melissa had insisted on, running up costs they knew we couldn't easily repay. A knock on the door startled me. Mike stood there, still in his chef whites, holding a newspaper. You need to see this, he said, placing it on my desk. The headline jumped out immediately. CTANONCESINAUGUILRESTY To Predixius 2GDG BS of Day 1 Taiwanin. I scanned the article. 50 restaurants would participate in a week-long celebration of local cuisine. Special menus, exclusive events, and most importantly, reviews from the city's top food critics. The kind of exposure that could make or break a restaurant. Below the main article was a smaller piece. Pearl and Jade to showcase revolutionary Chinese fusion during Restaurant Week. The quote from Jason made my blood boil. We're bringing Chinese cuisine into the modern era, moving beyond traditional limitations to create something truly special. Moving beyond traditional limitations, they were serving Papa's recipes with fancy plating and inflated prices. I was about to crumple the paper when another detail caught my eye. The judges' panel would include Victor Chen, the legendary food critic whose review had earned Papa his Michelin star 20 years ago. Slowly, I smoothed the paper back out. An idea was forming, dangerous, risky, but possibly our only chance. Mike, I said quietly, remember those experimental dishes we were working on? The ones that combine Papa's techniques with modern molecular gastronomy? He nodded. We've been developing them in our off hours, never quite finding the right moment to add them to the menu. I think it's time to perfect them. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found the number I needed. And I need to make a call. To who? I smiled for the first time in weeks. An old friend who owes Papa a favor. Someone who might help us get into Restaurant Week and show everyone what real innovation tastes like. The next morning, I arrived at Golden Pearl before dawn. In my bag was Papa's real recipe book, not the decoy Jason and Melissa had copied, but the true family treasures. Recipes perfected over 3 generations, with notes in my grandfather's handwriting, Papa's careful modifications, and my own recent additions. Time to remind everyone why Golden Pearl earned that Michelin star. And maybe, just maybe, serve up a dish best served cold. Restaurant Week was 3 days away, and Golden Pearl's kitchen hummed with energy. The scent of experimental sauces and innovative preparations filled the air as my team worked to perfect our special menu. The molecular pearls of soy sauce are ready, Mike called out, carefully lifting a tray of perfectly spherical liquid caviar we created using sodium alginate. When burst, they'd release Papa's secret soy blend, a modern presentation of ancient flavors. Good. Add them to the deconstructed Xiao Long Bao. I was bent over my own station, carefully arranging paper-thin slices of Wagyu beef into the shape of a blooming lotus flower. Each petal would be torch-seared tableside, releasing the complex marinade we'd spent weeks perfecting. The door chimed, and Amy's voice drifted back. I'm sorry, we're closed for prep. Deanna, are you here? My hands froze. That voice. Papa stood in the doorway, leaning on his cane. His face was drawn with concern. Someone showed me this. He held up a copy of the local paper, Pearl and Jade's Restaurant Week announcement. Why didn't you tell me? I quickly wiped my hands. You don't need to worry about. I'm your father. Worrying is my job. He made his way to my prep station, examining the dishes in progress. His right hand trembled slightly as he reached for a spoon, but his eyes were sharp as ever. Tell me everything. So I did. The betrayal, the stolen recipes, the sabotage campaign. With each detail, his face grew darker. These people, he said finally, they think recipes are just instructions. Lists of ingredients. They don't understand. He picked up the family recipe book I've been consulting. Every dish here has a story. Your grandmother created this sauce while hiding from the Cultural Revolution. I perfected this marinade the night you were born. Couldn't sleep, so I cooked until dawn. His fingers traced the handwritten notes. Now you add your own stories. But they, he gestured toward Pearl and Jade. They have no stories, no soul. They have our customers, I said quietly. For now, he smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him since his stroke. But I have an idea. The next hour was like stepping back in time. Papa couldn't cook anymore, but his mind was still a treasury of culinary knowledge. Together, we refined my experimental dishes, adding subtle touches that elevated them from impressive to extraordinary. The trick, he said, adjusting the spices in my lotus beef marinade, is to give them something they can copy, and something they can't. I understood. Anyone could write down a recipe, but the soul of a dish, that came from somewhere deeper. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Word spread that Golden Pearl would participate in Restaurant Week, despite Pearl and Jade's attempts to have us excluded. Their latest rumor suggested we'd bribed our way in. If they only knew. The night before Restaurant Week began, I made one final call. Everything's ready. All set, my contact confirmed. The critics have their schedules. Chen will be there. I hung up and gathered my staff. Tomorrow, we show them what Golden Pearl is really made of. Restaurant Week opened with a bang. Pearl and Jade unveiled their menu with typical fanfare, press releases, social media blitz, influencer previews. Their offerings were familiar. Our traditional recipes dressed up with fancy plating and pretentious descriptions. Golden Pearl took a different approach. No announcements, no previews. Just a simple sign. Special tasting menu. Limited seating. The first critic arrived Tuesday night. She tried to be discreet, but we knew who she was. Sarah Chin, Victor's daughter and a respected reviewer in her own right. She ordered our tasting menu and watched with widening eyes as each course arrived. First, the lotus beef, blooming under the torch's flame. Then Xiao Long Bao reimagined. The molecular soy pearls bursting with familiar flavors in an entirely new way. Each dish combined Papa's classic techniques with modern innovations that enhance rather than mask the original brilliance. She stayed for 3 hours, taking notes between bites. Her review dropped the next morning. Golden Pearl proves innovation doesn't mean abandoning tradition. It means building on it with respect and understanding. Each dish tells a story, each bite reveals layers of meaning and memory. This isn't just dinner, it's edible art with a soul. The article went viral. Our phones started ringing. But we were saving most tables for the remaining critics. Jason and Melissa noticed the increased activity. They sent spies, servers pretending to be customers, trying to decode our new dishes. But as Papa had said, some things can't be copied. Thursday night, Victor Chen himself arrived. I watched through the kitchen window as he was seated, older now than when he first reviewed us, but still commanding respect with his presence. Ready? Mike asked as we plated the first course. I nodded, adding a final touch to the dish that had taken us weeks to perfect. Papa's signature Hong Shao Ru, red braised pork belly, reimagined as delicate cubes of melt-in-your-mouth meat, each glazed with a different intensity of sauce. Arranged in a spiral pattern that told the story of the dish's evolution through 3 generations of our family. As each course went out, I could see Chen taking careful notes. His expression remained neutral professional, until the final dish arrived, my tribute to Papa's original Michelin-starred creation. It looked nothing like the original, but one bite and his eyes widened. There it was, the exact flavor that had earned that star, transformed into a completely new presentation. He asked to speak with me. That last dish, he said carefully, I remember it. 20 years ago, but they're serving something very similar next door. I placed Papa's recipe book on his table, open to a specific page. You mean this recipe? The one you reviewed 20 years ago. He examined the page, the original handwritten recipe, with decades of notes and refinements. Then he looked at the date clearly marked at the top. I see. His voice was quiet but carried weight. And next door. They're serving an interpretation. I chose my words carefully. From a copy of our recipe, one they obtained while working here. Before opening their own restaurant? Exactly. He made a final note, then stood. Thank you for an enlightening evening. His review appeared in Sunday's paper, the final day of Restaurant Week. The headline said it all. Tale of Two Restaurants, Innovation versus Imitation. The article was brutal in its elegance. Without directly accusing Pearl and Jade of theft, it traced the lineage of several dishes to Golden Pearl's original creations. It praised our new menu as evolution with respect, while dismissing their offerings as superficial adaptations of superior originals. The killing blow came in the final paragraph. In this tale of two restaurants, one shows us the future of Chinese cuisine, a future built on understanding and honoring the past. The other offers only shadows of greatness, copies without soul. Choose wisely. The effect was immediate. Our phones rang nonstop. Reservations poured in. Food bloggers dissected Chen's review, connecting the dots about recipe theft and business ethics. Pearl and Jade's tables emptied. Their influencer friends went quiet. Their carefully crafted image crumbled under the weight of authenticity. 2 weeks later, I arrived at Golden Pearl to find a fancy envelope in our mail. Inside was a letter from the Michelin Guide they would be sending reviewers in the coming months. That evening, as service wound down, I heard the door chime. Jason stood there, looking uncomfortable. "We're closing," I said flatly. "Deanna, please, our bookings are down 70%. We can't survive like this. Maybe we could work something out. A partnership." Like last time, I smiled. "No thank you, but I'm sure you'll land on your feet. I hear there's a growing market for fast food fusion." He left, shoulders slumped. Through the window, I watched him trudge back to Pearl and Jade, where Melissa waited anxiously. They sold the restaurant 2 months later. The space became a yoga studio. Golden Pearl flourished. We maintained our traditional menu but added a special innovation night featuring our experimental dishes. The waiting list stretched to months. Papa started coming by more often, sitting at his old table, watching with pride as we served both old favorites and new creations. His hands still trembled, but his smile was strong and sure. One quiet afternoon, he called me over. "You know why their food never tasted quite right?" I shook my head. "Because recipes are like family stories," he said, patting the old recipe book. "You can steal the words, but not the love that seasons them." He was right, of course. You can copy a recipe, but you can't copy generations of experience, of tradition, of family pride passed down through countless meals. That's the real secret ingredient, the one that can never be stolen. Now when people ask about Pearl and Jade, I just smile and serve them something special. Something that tells our story in every bite. Because the best revenge doesn't need words. It just needs to be served at the perfect temperature, with a side of justice and a garnish of truth, just like Papa taught me.